You're the first ever man on this podcast. You're part of history. You've won First Division titles. You've played at Parkhead and Ibrox. You scored against Celtic as well. But come on, that's where it's at. But I wanted to actually talk about the first ever football game that I attended, or my first domestic game, which actually was Celtic and Inverness in 2012, February 2012. I was thinking, well, how cool would that be? The first guy that I have on a podcast was actually there in the stadium playing when I went to my first domestic game.
Cup?
No, it was the league.
It's the league.
I think so. It was 2 red cards in it. I remember when Daniel Mostorovic gets sent off and then one of your boys gets sent off. Was that a wee bit anticlimactic to find out you were an unused sub? Slightly, but hey ho, here we go. But I'm going to make the bold assumption that you're also a Celtic man based off the fact that you're a footballing hero, regardless of the fact you play as a right back, you bet I.
Mostly.
And he was a striker as Henrik Larsson. So I'm going to make the very bold assumption you're a Celtic man.
Yeah, I grew up a Celtic supporter. Yeah, I wasn't a season ticket holder when I was growing up, but certainly had John Collins, Henrik Larsson, Van Hooijdonk, Di Canio posters up on my wall growing up. So that was who I was trying to emulate when I was out kicking the ball off the wall at the lock-up down at the Ash pitches down where I lived in the Westwood in East Kilbride. So that was the dream. And that's what motivated me, and my brother as well, Kevin, he's a couple of years older. And the two of us used to go out and bang the ball against the wall and see where it took us, really.
Aye, no bad. Well, the first game that I actually did go to was Celtic Legends and Man United Legends, so as much as Larsson left before I was even born, yeah, he was still my first footballing man there. I do just want to fast track on to your youth career into football. Your first proper reserve side you were in was Hibs, am I right in saying that? You were at Motherwell before, am I right in also saying that as well?
Yeah, that's right, that's going back a bit. I was a schoolboy, I was around about 12 when I was at Motherwell. It was my PE teacher, Tommy Collins, who was a scout for Motherwell, and he asked me along. So we used to train underneath the stand at Fir Park to begin with, and played a few games for them, and then it all transferred over to Hibs because Alex McLeish, who was the manager at Motherwell, went to Hibs at first team level, and then the head of youth, John Park, and a lot of the coaches, Bill Hendry and a few of the others, all transferred over to Hibs, and we had a choice to make. So at that point, they asked me to go over to Hibs, and spoke to my dad, and at that point, obviously my dad was a big influence in my career, my decision making at 12, 13 years old. So we decided to give it a go, and the rest is history. So backward and forward through to Edinburgh, pretty much every week, training in Whitburn or Bathgate halfway. So the East boys and the West boys would meet up, and that was all the way up through school, and then lucky enough when I left school, getting a pro contract. Aye,
I maybe then want to go back on your dad, because I take it then he's a big football influence then in your life. How was football and supporting the team you supported, I want to say encouraged, as in on the softer side, onto you? Because some people are totally season ticket since I was born, supporter since I was born, all my family. How though was Celtic and then the football brought onto you? Was it right, ball, you kick, goal, or was it just if you like it, you like it, if you don't, you don't? How was that?
I don't think there was too much pressure put on, to be honest. It just so happened to be that we enjoyed it and we were half decent at it. My oldest brother, actually, he played table tennis for Scotland Youth. So yeah, he went down a completely different path, so there was no pressure put on him. And myself and my brother Kevin just seemed to be hooked from an early age, and my dad supported us and took us along with my mum at times as well to pretty much every training session and game from when I was 7 or 8 years old right up to when I left the house at 17 years old, when I went through to Hibs and to stay in digs.
Yeah, well, from a Hibs point of view, you couldn't have picked a better crop of players to be in about, but you also probably couldn't have picked a worse crop of players, considering you had guys with the likes of, if I'm right in saying, Brown, Reardon, O'Connor, Whittaker. I know you maybe didn't see some of them, but going through with guys like that, and I know you want to play well as a team, and the only way to play well as an individual is to play well in the team. But does it deter you a wee bit when there's guys like that in the team? And I know they weren't exactly established stars at that point. Was it obvious though who stood out? Were there a few guys that surprised you as well going through the ranks?
No, I think all those you mentioned, plus Kevin Thompson, Kurt Broadfoot was actually my first year under 18s at Hibs when we went through there full time. And then he moved to St Mirren long after. So it was a really, really good crop of players, obviously, coming through in the one age group. Riordan and O'Connor were the year above, but we all played in the same under 18s team, and they get kind of fast tracked quite quickly onto the under 21s in the first team, and then it was up to us to try and keep up with them. But we had 2 years at it, a good crack at it, and then I get pulled in with Bobby Williamson, who was then Hibs manager, and it was pretty much like you say. There's such a good crop, you're not too far away, but unfortunately you're not Scott Brown, you're not Kevin Thompson, you're not Stephen Whittaker. So at the time it doesn't make it any easier, doesn't soften the blow. You just have to pick yourself back up and just forge your own path, really. Yeah.
Does it deter you a wee bit though, knowing that, like, my God, there's these guys here who they're getting into the team? How many places does this Hibs first team have for the youth boys? Does it deter you a wee bit? Just thinking, oh my God, there's so many talented players in around me.
I think it pushed you on to begin with. You could only improve when you're training with these types of boys, and they were all, good boys as well, and that's why they have went on and had stellar careers with it. It was, O'Connor and Riordan, potentially, could have fulfilled them, their potential that wee bit more, but at the same time they've went and made a bit of money and had well, established careers. So no, it certainly pushed us on as a group. We had a good crop. We probably could have done better in the Youth Cup. I think we got to the quarterfinals, which was a tragedy with that group of players in the BP Youth Cup, it used to be called. It certainly pushed you to be better every single day, knowing that you had to keep up with these boys. So in the long run, it certainly wouldn't have done me any harm.
Do you think though then your drive to succeed at Hibs, say it had been Celtic, a team that you were more supporting, more aligned with, do you think it would have pushed you on a bit more? Like, do you think boys who go through academies of teams that they supported as a boy, do you think they've got that wee extra push because, wow, it's your favourite team? Or by that point, is your head very much focused on just playing first team professional football and thinking, I've got a shot at something here?
Yeah, I think at that stage you kind of forget, where your kind of childhood loyalties lie, and it's all about, trying to make it at any level. You have to be the best you can be. So I didn't miss a home game at Easter Road from the age of 12, 13 right through to 19. So right from school, I was selling the half-time draw tickets. I was at we played the EK Athens and just missed out in extra time, and I was a ball boy in that game. So sunshine and Leith, when that comes on, you still get the hairs on the back of your neck. So no, a real soft spot for the club, and that tends to happen as a player. You obviously are professional, so you play for the team that pays your wages, but you tend to get a soft spot for it.
Aye, so you'd go on to go to Inverness. Am I on the right lines in saying that it was something to do with your shoulder in which you were then released, or am I jumping the gun to another club there?
No, that's correct. Well, it played a small part, but the writing might have been on the wall anyway. But I played a reserve game against Hearts at Easter Road and did fine. I think I was playing alongside Freddie Arpignon, who, very, very good player, French player, coming to the end of his career playing for Hibs, and did fine. And the next day, last 5 minutes of that game, dislocated my shoulder in a sling, and then the next day Bobby Williamson released me saying, I've not got much better news for you, son. We're letting you go. So that was hard to take, tough to take, but you just pick yourself back up again, and luckily enough, the move to Inverness happened pretty quickly.
Aye. Going to Inverness, though, you're saying about like Glasgow to Edinburgh, that's a task as it is, but going at a young age as well, going from Glasgow to Edinburgh to then Inverness, that's 3.5-4 hours away. to a city you don't exactly know, to a group of people you don't exactly know. It's very easy for us to look at all the big top transfers in the world. Jude Bellingham goes to Real Madrid at age 20, whatnot. But that's Real Madrid, you don't say no to that. See, when it is, of course, no disrespect to Inverness, of course, but when you're further down the chain of football, does the location, does things like that factor in a wee bit more when making your decision of where to go?
I think that's the first time I'll ever be in the same sentence as Jude Bellingham, but thanks for that. Probably not. To be honest, I looked at the league tables when I got the phone call from John Robertson, who was the manager at that point, and Donald Park was assistant manager, and he'd played a big part in my youth career. He was ex-Hibs coach, youth team coach, so I trusted him. As soon as the offer came in, it was full time, which was a massive plus, because there's not many boys, especially nowadays, that go from full time straight into another full time team if they get released. It's usually having to go part time and try and build their reputation. So they were mid table, I think, in the championship, the old first division. The fact that it was 3.5 hours drive probably didn't come too much into my thinking. I'd been away from home for a couple of years through in Edinburgh, so I thought, what's the difference? I'll just give it a go and see what happens.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Robertson actually, because he's what is he now for Inverness? Is he the director of football for Inverness? He's not the manager now, he's higher up obviously. I want to then talk about the style of management that he would have then had if he's now taking a job that isn't management, it's more of a hands-on football job. Is his style quite different? Does he have traits about him in which maybe more coachy managers don't have? Was it quite clear that he could have taken other jobs? Was there things that he maybe wasn't quite as good at because he had that in him to be more of a director than he was a coach?
So he's actually just stepped away from his role at Inverness recently.
Is he doing the punditry on BBC? Was I listening to that right?
Yeah, it could well be. I just think with the new manager coming in, I think that was him. He'd been there for so long in the background. He was a different type of manager to kind of obviously the coaches that I'd had as a youth player all the way up. Very influential in my career. Obviously showed that faith in me to begin with, but really good character, very bubbly personality. Anything that he lacked in the coaching field, Donald Park would pick that up. He was a very good coach as well. He used to tutor for the SFA as well, so he could do everything. We knew at that point he still had a strong affinity to Hearts, and it wasn't that long until Hearts came calling after I did sign actually. So they had no surprise with that, just because he'd kind of forged he's obviously had a good, I've lost my words, he made his own path at Inverness and deserved his opportunity at Hearts.
Aye. Then maybe more of a contrast would be your manager being Brewster as well. He was the player manager at that time, or he had been involved in something like that. What then was almost a contrast to Robertson? I would assume, what about a guy that is... Am I right in saying that he was the player manager when he was your man? Aye, so how different is that dynamic then, having a guy who is out on the pitch with you, but also sitting on the sidelines? Is he more of a big brother type as opposed to a fathering figure, if you know what I mean? Does he have maybe a bit more of an affinity with you? Is he a bit more sympathetic or affectionate because he's actually sharing the pitch with you?
I think it's a difficult role, to be honest. I find it difficult even, I'll join in training now and again. It is really hard to do the two roles and have both hats on and do it to, the full extent, to be honest. The beauty with Craig Brewster was that he was a very, very good player and very intelligent striker, centre forward, who could bring others into play. So that was his biggest strength. He looked after himself his whole career, probably even more so as he got older, and that was something that you couldn't help but basically use that as a role model. He would be top of the running, first of the running, if you weren't keeping up with him, you know, you had no excuse with the age that he was still playing at, 38, 39, you know, going on to play in his early 40s at a top level.
He'd have known that as well. He'd have known that he was giving you a wee bit of a shove.
100%, yeah, he used that. That was his key strength. So every manager's different, every coach, manager, you use, you know, your own strengths, and that was his. It was, you know, I'm your role model, you know, do as I do, not just as I say type thing. So no, it certainly worked in that short term where we were competing against the big boys, really, you know, punching above our weight, but we had a very good striker in it. So when he was in the dugout, he actually missed, you know, having a striker like himself and found it difficult to replace himself on the park.
Do you feel then that is a more effective way of coaching? Do as I do, not just as I say? I know you say you join in and training every now and then, but did you find that more effective when you actually had a guy there, not just showing you what to do, but demanding that this is what you do, as opposed to telling you this, that, and the next thing?
Yeah, I think it shows a kind of level of integrity that, you know, he's backing up what his message is to the players. So it certainly means that he's very transparent with it, and players at the end of the day, you know where they stand. You know, if they go and chap the door and, you know, they're not happy that they're not playing, you know, the first question would be, right, okay, are you fit enough? Are you managing to keep up with the manager? So it was certainly something that it upheld a certain standard in training in terms of your fitness and how you looked after yourself. So that was certainly something that I took from Brewster.
Aye, fair. You won 2 first division titles at Inverness. Your first one I'm interested in because I know as a player what you want to do is succeed, you want to win trophies, you want to win titles. But when you're now in this club environment, and that was monumental for the time at Cumbernauld Thistle, was it not? Because that was the first thing they'd really won since they merged together and became the one club. How, as an outsider to the club, I feel like, did you buy into the real occasion of what that trophy meant to the club and the people around it?
Yeah, good question. I think living there in digs, you know, and not really travelling down as much as I thought I might have done when I first went up. So I was planning on coming down most weekends and whatnot. So I did immerse myself into the whole and, you know, Invernessian. I didn't get the Invernessian accent, but I was pretty much there for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, coming down to see the family as and when. So no, it certainly it was something that I bought into. You know, there was a couple of boys in the same boat from either Glasgow or Edinburgh, and we would share the car journeys up when we did go down the road, and we'd stay in digs during the week, and training, you know, would last, you know, a few hours in the morning like it did at that point. You know, sometimes you'd do a double session on a Tuesday, but other than that, you were back and you were bonding with your teammates, and, you know, you would get really tight with a lot of them, certain boys in certain digs, and we'd go and meet up with them at certain points during the week. So no, a real team spirit, camaraderie, tightness as a group, and it certainly showed on the park, because again we were punching above our weight even at that level. You know, winning that first division, you know, probably nobody expected us to do it, and we went on a good run, overtook Clyde in the second last game of the season, and ended up winning it in the last day.
God, Clyde knocking on the Premiership's doors. How they might have fallen. What was I going to say there? Did the fact that Inverness had bought in and given you that chance aid your real team spirit or your own affinity towards the club? Was it the fact they were the first ones to really do it for you?
Yeah, of course. You know, you're go from on top of the world, playing at Hibs, it was my team all the way through at school, to then, you know, being rock bottom pretty much as a young footballer at 19 years old. You know, everything, all the thoughts go through your head. You do doubt yourself. You have plenty of doubts, and it's about picking yourself back up. And luckily, I didn't have to, you know, spend too much time wallowing in my self-pity. And a few days later, I'd signed for Inverness. So certainly wanted to repay their faith that they showed in me. Donald Park in particular, John Robertson, and just making sure that, you know, the club, a young club at that point, they'd shown faith in me. You tried to repay that faith by by being successful in the park and training hard and just giving your all, basically.
So, moving on to then Dundee United. So, Brewster wanted to take you with him to Dundee United. He didn't last very long there. And then the main man himself, Craig Levein, comes in, and you weren't in the plans. Was that pretty much how it went?
Pretty much in a nutshell, yeah. So yeah, it seemed to be quite a protracted transfer saga for somebody that wasn't really going to be the first name in the team sheet every week. So they were looking for Ian Black and Dan Dodds, and they got me, unfortunately, Dundee United. So Dan Dodds came that wee bit later on, and Blackie ended up going to, was it Hearts first, then Rangers, possibly. So I think they'd seen what a good group of hard-working boys could achieve, and obviously Brewster thought, let's try and recreate that at Dundee United. But two different clubs, different stages of their, obviously lifespans, with Dundee United being about for such a long time, and Inverness only formed in 1994. So it was two different types of clubs, so you couldn't really recreate what we did at Inverness. He gave it a good go, Brewster, but probably just not given enough time, and obviously results at the end of the day, it's a results business. So I think Craig Levein actually reaped a lot of the rewards with some of the signings, like Noel Hunt, Craig Conway, all going on and having really good Dundee United careers and beyond. Stevie Robb had signed, Lee Wilkie had brought in to get fit, but couldn't quite get him fit before he'd lost his job. And then Craig Levein came in, and I just wasn't his player, so he didn't fancy me. So kind of shipped out to Airdrie on loan, which again was great for me, getting game time. Good bunch of boys. Graham Holmes was there, who is now playing at Cumbernauld Colts, still playing. So made some good friends. Real eye opener. I'm at Dundee United with 2.5 years left in my contract. Going to Airdrie at that point, you had boys that were full time on £100 odd a week, £120 a week, fighting for their careers, fighting for their contracts, and fighting to stay in that division, which unfortunately we didn't do. So yeah, it was a real sickener to go on loan there, hoping to get game time, get my confidence up, but I was in a relegation battle, so it wasn't ideal, but certainly you could say character building and an eye opener to see there's folk that are fighting tooth and nail to have a full-time career in football for not a lot of money. So at that point you're thinking, right, I need to grasp it, I need to make sure that I make the most of it.
Do you think then it's maybe been an asset to the game in recent times that most clubs are now adopting a director of football who, it used to then be the manager signs the manager's players, whereas now it's become the director of football hires the manager, who then hires his players as an overall, this is how the club wants to play, these are the players that the club wants, not necessarily the manager. Do you think though that that's been beneficial? Because like you say, you come in and Levein just doesn't fancy, and that happens a lot now in football anyway. Do you think maybe things could have been different if we maybe did have stay in modern times and Dundee United did adopt a director of football model where you weren't signed because you weren't Levein's player, but because you were a Dundee United player?
Yeah, I think that was the model, wasn't it? The manager was overarching, in control of so much: signings, recruitment, budget, training, sports science, sports development, physio, the medical. The manager pretty much ruled. So obviously it has changed days now where you delegate a lot more and get the right people in to a club for it to be sustainable, not just 18 months, right, the manager's having a shocker, so they'll get rid of him and then start the cycle again. So yeah, obviously the director of football route has worked in certain clubs, so it hasn't worked in other clubs as well. So it's the dynamic really that needs to be spot on, in that relationship, which is hard to foster it if a director of football's there for a longer period of time and brings in a manager following a recruitment process. It's just your luck really whether they bond and have similar. They don't have to have the exact same. That would just be daft, but at the same time they need to have some sort of similarities in the way they see football played. Otherwise, they're just going to keep clashing.
Do you think then, and you can now say it because you're a manager, that I know it's quite a common question as well of, do managers get enough time? But we look at the likes of Mikel Arteta, who, as much as he does have a director of football, that director of football has allowed him to stay in a job for a long time, and he'd been getting hounded for years, and now he's got it. He's got a club who look like they're going to compete for a title for 2 straight years. They're in the Champions League now, and you never know what will happen in that. Do you think then that the likes of Brewster coming in and being like, right, you, let's try and recreate like what we had at Inverness, to then bringing in such a big contrast, and Levein was like, that's why are you giving me this? This isn't the team I've got. So do you think then it maybe needs to be a wee bit sticking to contracts, maybe, if you know what I mean? Because it's very easy just to sack a manager, or it appears to be very easy these days just to sack a manager. Do you think in general now football needs to be a wee bit more patient of and respect the fact that people have got 3-year contracts, so that maybe when it comes to the end of a year it's like, right, now you can go? Does football need to adopt more of a rolling contract, or a right at the end of this year though, if you're no up to it, you're away?
Yeah, it's a good example. Arteta obviously had his ups and downs in his first season, couple of seasons.
Manager that's been given a bit of time.
Yeah. Eric Ten Hag, probably, a few years ago, 5 years ago, he probably wouldn't still be in a job, but it seems to be that, they're seeing something, and he's obviously got a certain philosophy. It might take a wee bit of time to spend enough money, right enough. But yes, it's key for you to establish some sort of culture or environment that you can see players thriving in. It doesn't happen overnight, so it needs to be a natural occurrence over the course of a year and a half, 2 years. And if at that point you're not seeing shoots of progress, then obviously by all means you can rethink where you want to go. But there's not many managers that can go in and get an instant bounce plus the sustainable aspect.
Yeah. I then want to talk about your return to Inverness, because you're a guy who has spent several stints at several clubs, which I find quite interesting. So I wonder, do you buy into a sense of security and a sense of being comfortable in an environment? Like, was part of the reason you went back to Inverness, and you look at, what's his name, Derek Adams now, going back to Ross County for a third time. A lot of that is because he knows the club, he knows the chairman, he knows how it all operates. Do you think that sentiment exists a lot more in football now, maybe further down the food chain of football, as I was saying earlier, that when you don't have the Real Madrids and Barcelonas to squab over, that because you knew the club, you knew how you were going to be treated, you knew the general ins and outs, did you think, I can't say no to that again?
Yeah, it was an enjoyable period, my first period, so it certainly played a part, and at the end of the day, that's why you're in football, really. It's to go and enjoy it, because it's a short career. So it was obviously a good club playing at a high level, so it's something that you continue to strive towards, is being the best you can be. At the same time, you need to be enjoying the journey as you go. It can't just be the grind and having one step forward and 2 steps back. It's just a case of trying to be somewhere that you're comfortable, that you'll go and develop and enjoy it first and foremost. If you're not enjoying it, you're not going to be playing your best football.
I do feel like sometimes we do actually forget that as much as it's a short career, football's still a job. You're not necessarily just going to leave to go to another company just because it's better pay. Like, if you've been at a company for however many years and you know how they treat you, why are you going to leave? I think we get too wrapped up in what Fabrizio Romano tells us every day, the transfer window, that somebody's on the move here, somebody's on the move there, that we actually forget that this is these guys' jobs.
Yeah.
But from the spectator's perspective, it's different. I want to then talk about another one of your managers, which is the main man, Terry Butcher himself. Guy that came with a reputation, I'm sure. How I compare it to Gerrard at Rangers, for example. I know as a player you can't quite be starstruck by a manager. How long does his reputation and his magic almost go on until it wears off, and how much of an effect does it have? I think, my God, we've actually got a serious guy here, and how long before you do think, right, he's just a gaffer?
The bounce, the new manager bounce is definitely a thing, and it's just human nature. Somebody new comes in, you don't know where you stand. It tends to get the most out of most players, and we did have a decent bounce. I'm sure we were second or last. I think it might have been second bottom when Terry came in. We took it to the last day. Right enough, I think it was Fall Cup. Maybe we played in the last day. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to stay up. But that he definitely had that aura about him, and when he walked into a room, he had to duck literally because his size and his stature. Yeah. So yeah, motivational, that type of thing. He was obviously all over that. That was one of his main strengths. The fact that he'd 100 caps possibly for England, and the images of him blood splattered all over his England top, certainly helped forge that reputation, and it did get a song out of us really for the short term, and then we had to regroup that summer. But managed to bounce straight back up the following season when we won the championship again.
You would then leave Inverness for a second time because of your injury. Well, not just because of your injury, but was it not almost another writing on the wall, like you can't really be hanging around too much longer? Is it? I know you had obviously built a very good relationship and connection with the club of Inverness, but from a selfish human point of view, is it easy or hard to sympathise with not just the manager but the board when they do come to you and say your time's up?
I think nowadays, yeah, I can see why. When you looked at my maybe stats that last season, maybe only was available for 60-70% of the games.
Probably why I didn't see you that day then.
So I mean, possibly wouldn't have been. I played the cup game against Celtic round about that time as well, and I gave away a penalty. It was can't remember who I brought down. It might have been Gary Hooper. And Scott Brown put the penalty away, I'm sure. So
that's when you took penalties that season. I remember that one.
So that was maybe why I was sitting on the bench rather than the injuries. But yeah, I'd had a few hamstring strains, and later on in my career, I found out it was coming from my back. I'd had a stress fracture in my back, and I was trying to kind of play through it without realising what it was. So every time I managed to get myself fit, then I was breaking down. And it basically was just a part of the ways that everybody accepted. I was gutted because that was 8 years that I spent in total over the two periods. So yeah, difficult to leave because it's friends and close colleagues that you've worked with for so long. Lovely part of the world. My wife at that point, it was my girlfriend. Was coming up most weekends, really enjoying it as well. So yeah, one door closes, another one opens, so you just have to get back in the horse and see where it takes you.
In terms of that opening door then, it's, if you look at your career path, it's the one that you maybe raise an eyebrow to. So as I'd said to you before, I'm quite big into the American football, so I'm big into most of all the American sports. Like, I'll watch them, I know all the teams, but I don't really follow them apart from the American football. The basketball a wee bit I keep up to date with. The MLS has always been something that has just interested me because the culture is so different. You didn't play in the MLS, but you played in the NASL, and you played for Edmonton there, which is, you could maybe describe it as the Highlands, but on steroids, really, I take it, in terms of the temperature up there. Must have been...
yeah, it was -40 at one point. So yeah, it was a culture shock, put it that way.
Aye.
But, arrived there in the summer, beautiful weather there in the summer, so it's basically 6 months of lovely weather.
Full sense of security then, isn't it?
A wee bit, yeah. Yeah, but I was well aware that it was a different experience, so I was going with my eyes wide open, and yeah, no regrets whatsoever. I absolutely loved, with a couple of years that I spent in North America, Canada in particular. Obviously, we travelled to the US, most away games.
So I was going to say, that must have been brutal though, because was San Antonio not in that league? So you having to go essentially from top of North America quite literally to the bottom of Texas.
Yeah. There was quite a few in the kind of south with North Carolina, with Tampa Bay, Florida.
That's where Robbie Nielsen's went into it.
That's right, yeah. So we played the Rowdies. That was actually my debut. Away from home, and it was 38 degrees at that point. So humidity as well was through the roof. So that was a wee bit of a shock to the system. Slightly different style of play to get used to. But no, I absolutely loved it. Edmonton, different kettle of fish, where the winters were cold, a dry cold. So you couldn't really leave your skin exposed for a certain amount of time, otherwise that was you. But summer football certainly was the way forward over there, and I absolutely loved it. A big break at Christmas time, managed to get home, see the family, back out there, and again, unfortunately, with a change of manager, just going to change my situation.
You never got a break, did you?
That's what it seems always excuses, isn't it? So that was a common factor, I think. But no, it was Colin Miller, who's actually Scottish, but he played for Canada. He had a lot of caps for Canada. He played for Hearts, Hamilton, I think, possibly Dunfermline in Scotland, and then went out and coached out in Canada. So with him having that Scottish connection and him becoming the manager, I think everybody thought that I'd be a shoo-in for keeping my spot on the roster, but there was only a certain amount of foreigners you're allowed on the squad, so that was one of the casualties, and unfortunately played a year under him, and then it was the following year that he wanted to move in a different direction.
Was there any other options? Because you had said because you were interviewed by, I think I read it on the Daily Record, and you'd said that it was just looking for a fresh start, and that you still could have put in a shift for a Premiership side. What was the main driving factor? Because we look at North America and we think, maybe bar Mexico, of course, retirement home. Now Saudi Arabia looks like it's coming up as well as the Trans-Europe destination. Of course, it's not to the level of Scottish football, or at least the intensity, I presume. Do you think we overlook that a wee bit? And once again, getting back to the fact that football is just a career, do you think we overlook the fact that you maybe are going to get paid handsomely going somewhere else, or it's just a new adventure, or you've been offered by a compatriot?
Yeah, I done my research, and the league was competitive. There was actually a lot of full internationals throughout the league. The NASL at the time, which was the second division, the USL was the third division.
Yeah,
and that's
moved up now,
moved up. Yeah, but the NASL at that time didn't have a structure with their budget, so they didn't have a salary cap, whereas MLS does. Yeah. So, or did. I don't know what the rules are now, but certainly at that time,
still got one, I think, and there's foreign player limits as well.
Yeah,
so.
Designated player, wasn't it? That was what they called it. So they were limited, the MLS teams. So the NASL were actually paying good money to a lot of South American, Central American, and full internationals. So yeah, I was playing against Venezuelan internationals, Jamaican, Haiti, just Chile. There was a boy, Yashir Pinto, who ended up going and playing. He was half Palestinian. I think he ended up playing for Palestine rather than for Chile, but he was a Chilean, I'm sure, under 20 international at that point. So real good players, different styles, like you say, and then obviously you had the Canadians and the Americans as well, who athletics, and the way they came through their kind of college system. It was all about the kind of strength and conditioning. So a different environment, different culture, style of life, lifestyle. My wife didn't come out to begin with, but she came out the following year, just after kind of Christmas, New Year, and we had a brilliant time. So something that we look back on with fond memories, and maybe take the kids one day and show them where we stayed and whatnot.
Do you look back maybe now, because Canadian football's changed, or Canadian soccer's changed, in the sense that the CPL has now been the designated Canadian League. Edmonton's, of course, went into that division now. They're now looking pretty promising, in the sense they've got a guy like Alphonso Davies, who went straight from Vancouver to Bayern Munich. They've got him in the national team lineup. They've got an alright guy, Alistair Johnson, as well on the other side. Do you look at Canadian football and do you think it's starting to come on the up now? Like, does your interest in a club like that, well, I don't mean to make that sound offensive to the club or anything, but in the sense that you spent years at Inverness, so of course you built up quite a relationship. Do you look back still on the likes of Edmonton and think it's it's alright what they're doing over there.
Yeah, again, it was another club in its infancy, really. Like a lot of franchises, so to speak, in North America. So yeah, it was more so to do with the opportunity that kind of arose from it. The travelling was, I enjoyed it. You're flying down on a Thursday, staying down in a hotel Thursday, Friday, playing on the Saturday, staying in the hotel on the Saturday night. With a night out in Miami or Florida, St. Petersburg, wherever it may be. To going in New York, we played New York Cosmos, and after the game you're going down to Manhattan to kind of let a bit of steam off, and fly back the following day. So something that you just couldn't recreate anywhere probably in Europe. So it was something else in that sense. And Canadian football has come on since then. It was still in its infancy, like I say. It was the women's team that were, the real kind of strong team, and they had a lot of fans going to the women's games, and obviously the men have caught up.
Aye, you then go back to Airdrie after the Canadian stint. It must have been a very different thought. Well, you'd come from. They were Airdrie United at that point, weren't they? Because they were essentially the Phoenix club from Airdrieonians. Was there a feel of slight, this club doesn't feel totally stable just because of what had happened in years prior, and then you're now getting into this environment where Airdrie have established themselves? And, well, you look at what they're doing now, there's every right in which they could surprise people and maybe go up or challenge for it. Was there then a different feel of that? But personally as well, the first time you went to Airdrie, it was I need to kick on here, my career depends on this spell. You've now come back for Canada. Are you thinking to yourself, are we on the slope down? Is there maybe a chance at heading back up? What's your whole mindset at that point?
Yeah, certainly all these thoughts do go through your head. You reach 30 years old, that's you're traditionally on the downward slope, but that was the first time I was part-time from being full-time from when I left school at 17. So it was something that you have to now think about. You're not making enough money to basically pay the mortgages or whatnot. So you need to make sure that you're thinking a contingency plan. And that's where obviously, like the PFA come in nowadays. Obviously you're having to maybe at that point really think in your feet what's for you. And I went and studied to be a physio, so it was 5 years, and while I was playing part-time, managed to go and get my degree in physio, which I work part-time in now.
Aye. You'd go back to, well, I say go back as if you'd played there. East Kilbride is where you're from. You'd eventually play for East Kilbride briefly. Well, you play for them technically in separate stints, would you not? But it was pretty much the same stint. It would then end with you briefly being the interim manager there. What was that whole experience like? Because at that point you must be thinking this is quite literally a until the end of the season spell. But the mid-table or so at that point, am I right in saying so? I'm not saying is there any motivation, because of course there is. You were a rookie in terms of that coaching aspect, but how much drive was there in your head to actually do well, and what to you was success at that point for East Kilbride?
Yeah, sure. I did my B licence quite early on when I was still up in Inverness. Actually, there's not much else to do, so I was studying to do my B licence up there. So it was always in my head about going on and coaching when I stopped playing. So I felt like I'd kind of naturally done that while I was still a player. Putting my arm around some of the younger players, giving them advice if they wanted to listen, and then got the opportunity to coach and then become interim manager. So yeah, it was an honour, privilege. Obviously, it's no cliche about it. It was my hometown team that I grew up. So to be able to kind of manage them at that spell for even if it was 3 or 4 games, it definitely gave you the wee bug for it. And it probably just stayed with me ever since.
Aye, I take it does definitely force you to learn fast though, because you're on limited time to do it. How different then were you mentally in terms of coaching and in terms of football from being given the gig to do that and then finishing it? What was different at the end of that?
I think probably the realisation that's cut through it, even in the short space of time. That's when COVID hit, and at the beginning of it, I was taking my hometown team to then, 3 months later, while we're in the middle of lockdown, getting told that was me. I was surplus to requirements type thing. They went through the kind of full interview process, due diligence and whatnot, but at that point they were going down a different direction, so that's fine. And took a wee break from football, and got a call from James Orr at Cumbernauld Colts the following year or so, and that started my next page of my career.
Was the fact then that you had a wee brief stint in the Lowland League, did that have part of you to coming back and thinking this is definitely an environment in which you can succeed as a manager?
I think it's a brilliant league, to be honest. I think it's such a competitive league. Some real good teams in it, good football getting played. Obviously you've got the ex-junior teams that went senior to get into the pyramid coming up. Likes of Trinent, Celtic Hearts. Aye. Obviously didn't stay in the league too long because they get promoted. You've got Inverness City, who went up, one of the first teams to go up, and then you've got Spartans that get promoted now. And then on the other hand, you've got the teams that have come down: Berwick Rangers, East Stirlingshire, and Albion Rovers. Yeah. It's not a cakewalk, So it's a really competitive league, and I'm privileged to be a manager in it. So I'm enjoying every minute.
What type of promises then, or how much enticement does a board then need to give a manager in which they want to bring in? How does it differ from, say, persuading a player to come to a team?
Well, certainly I came in as first team coach firstly, and James gave me a wee call, spoke to him for a good hour on the phone, and he invited me down to the stadium. Once you see the facility, it's second to none at this level, if not above. There's a lot of SPFL teams would be enviable with this this setup that we've got here. So we're under no illusion how lucky we are to have this. We've got a good relationship with North Lanarkshire Council, and we treat it with respect, and that professionalism that comes with having this type of facility. We've got good people here that you can't just have the facility; it would just be an empty shell. You've got good people within it that make it a real club, and real community club. So I love coming every Monday and Thursday night for training and playing here on a Saturday. So long may it continue.
How does your own personal ambitions then as a coach, whatever they may be, I think it was the Broadwood derby, it was the open goal game that Sam North Footy Adventures had come to. I think he had a wee word with you, didn't he? Mm-hmm. I remember he'd went upstairs and he spoke to the chairman himself. He was saying about, right, we want to go up, that's the next goal. We've done well in terms of bringing the players up and building the club up. Of course, must be very proud of the fact that a Colts club and still coming through. This is your first proper stint, so the fact then, I'm not saying there's an expectation for you to go up, because as much as you are technically second in the league because of Hearts, isn't it? East Kilbride are looking like they're going to push on with the stars that they've got at the helm, especially. I tried my first Black Rooster today, actually. I was thinking of that, actually. I was thinking Mick Kennedy. I'm trying to rival as assistant manager now, aren't I? So it's even better. Does that put a wee bit of pressure on you? Is that then, I know because you've bought into the club, you want to take the club up, I understand that, but because you're the first time manager, you must be thinking a wee bit, can we? Like, how do you process that in your head? How do you make sure that they are all smooth in terms of what you're thinking and what the board's thinking?
Another good question. The club has the infrastructure, they have the facility, put it that way. There's still plenty to be getting done, behind the scenes. We're one of the few that's got the bronze badge, so at this moment in time, we're the only team that could potentially get promoted. I'm sure that'll change. I'm sure there's a few waivers that might be given out in terms of other teams that might not have that bronze award. But the club have worked really hard. Stuart McKenzie was the chairman for a long time. He's honorary president now. Worked really hard along with a lot of others to make sure that we got the bronze award. So yeah, that takes into consideration lots of different factors, but certainly is testament to the professionalism that is here and the hard work from the volunteers that go in behind the scenes. So yeah, I'd love to continue to help them be successful, and if we took them to the next level, it would be fantastic. But if a club like Cumbernauld Colts, if we can continue to establish ourselves in this division with such a strong group of teams that are in it and potentially going to come in it from the west of Scotland and east of Scotland, then we'll be doing okay, because it's still a good level. It's the 5th tier of Scottish football, so you want to have a good stint at the Scottish Cup. The South Challenge Cup's a decent trophy as well. So all these things, there's plenty to play for, and I'm not looking too far ahead. It's one game at a time, and that's been the beauty of Cumbernauld Colts, really. There's no expectations on us at the beginning of the season, and East Kilbride, quite rightly so, alongside Trinent. They're favourites for a reason, because they've got good players and coached well. So if we can keep up with them, then we're doing great.
We're talking about homes there, didn't you? I had listened to Jim Goodwin's Manager of the Month interview with Open Goal since he won that for the championship. I take it he is one of your almost total centurions on the pitch, in terms of he's the voice of you, because there's about a year apart in terms of your age there.
Not less than that, a month.
Less than that, a month.
He's actually a month older than me.
Well, the thing is as well is there's a number of coaches in the NFL who are all like, Sean McVay came into the league when he was about 31. There's guys that are like 34, 35. There's players that are older than them there. Do you think the players react differently to a younger manager as opposed to an older guy? Because maybe, once again, as we were talking about Brewster, there's a bit more sympathy, a bit more empathy, because you're not that long off the pitch yourself.
I think there is an element to that, yeah. It's a different day and age as well. So boys are looking for different type input than what I might have got from the managers, and it was a lot autocratic type leadership styles when I was a player, and it's different now. They want you to help them. They want you to understand them. You need to be able to ask, what's our family been up to? How are they feeling? Away from the park. How's their job going? Because it's so important. We know that now, that mental health and their well-being is so important for them to be able to play football without a care in the world on a Saturday when they cross that white line, and that's the aim. So you want to be able to help them do that and bring that for them. So you need to prepare sessions that allow them to do that. You need to create an environment that they look forward to coming into. So yeah, it's a unique type of coaching and management style to what it used to be. So the fact that I'm slightly younger, but I'm not the youngest. You've got Martin Fellows at St Cadix, who I know for East Kilbride, so yeah. There's younger than me.
Anyway, David Proctor, as we said, you're the history man. You are the maiden voyage. I still actually don't have a name for this.
Right.
I've maybe got about 3 weeks or so to think it, and I'll cut that. But thanks very much for being on, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.